It's important to understand how bad the human brain is about probabilities. You really have to educate yourself. People don't think about or talk about framing enough, but framing a decision happens automatically whether you think about it or not, and so it's good to think about it and frame the question correctly. This issue of thinking about things in a more probabilistic way. So instead of what do I do tomorrow, it's build the graph of 30 years with today in the middle and say, where's this come from, where's it going, and what are all the potential outcomes, and how do I think about that?
All right, I am here with my buddy Richard Arnold, and I gotta say, I always go between Rich and Richard with you, and so we'll bounce between the two. But this is the perfect opportunity to lay out what we're talking about today, and it's decision making. So by the end of this, I hope that I can make a qualified decision as whether I'm going to call you Richard or Rich, and additionally, how I can better understand the decisions that I'm making in my own business and in my life. So, once again, Richard, thank you for being on today. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us again.
No worries at all. I'm excited.
No. I think that's the perfect way to start this. So, I think we were emailing back and forth and talking about something, and like that it was the book Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow was a book that you said that if you were to sit down and write a book, it would be along that lines of the subject, but it would be how to make like high quality decisions. And so that's the impetus. And I think I want to understand like where you're coming at from, like making decisions, and how you're laying that out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it How to Make a Decision. It's the how to book that hasn't really been written right. And, Kahneman's book,
Yeah.
Thinking Fast and Slow, I sent it to my son saying, not only is that the book I would have written, but it's written by the best person in the world to write it, because Kahneman understands this whole field of human judgment and reasoning, which is a subsection of the field of cognitive psych that is what my degree from Stanford's in. So I've always been a student of the academic work in that world, but I've also been
Okay.
connected and related, and this is an important input to this conversation. When we first got big computers, craze, right? The first one was an
Yep.
IBM research machine, but the next one went to Stanford University's SRI, Stanford Research Institute. And it was used for decision analysis. So my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, was part of that team, and I got to understand what they were doing in that team and met a whole bunch of the people in that team, all of whom went on to really interesting subsequent jobs, up to and including, giving global financial management advice to national treasurers and ministers of finance around the world, or to the big law firms for jury selection type decision analysis, etc. So that was decision analysis using quantitative tools, multi-scenario modeling. And it really introduced me to the importance of probabilistic analysis as opposed to deterministic analysis. And it was one of the points in my life where I realized that I had a tremendous advantage over a lot of other people because I more comfortably or almost natively move into a probabilistic type of thinking or a stochastic type of thinking, whereas the human
Okay.
is natively pretty deterministic. And that's a big, big difference. So a lot of this conversation will involve this issue of thinking about things in a more probabilistic way. So instead of what do I do tomorrow, it's build the graph of 30 years with today in the middle and say, where's this come from? Where's it going? And what are all the potential outcomes? And how do I think about that? So it led me to not just the academic study of human judgment and reasoning and all the thinking fast, thinking slow, how we are bound to make natively bad decisions because we're deterministic, to
Yeah.
really how do you apply probabilistic and proper analytical frameworks to business decision making and hence personal decision making. And I've mentioned to you before this guy by the name of Subhash Gupta, a physicist that my sister had introduced me to, who has spent his life doing real-time decision systems as opposed to decision support systems. So machines that made better decisions than humans given the same problem, right? And he helped me a lot by educating me about how he thinks about decisions. And so that's really what we're going to talk about is kind of Subhash Gupta's framework given that background. So the first issue is
I love it.
framing. People don't think about or talk about framing enough, but framing a decision happens automatically whether you think about it or not. And so it's good to think about it and frame the question correctly, right? So what do I mean by framing? Well, a simple thing like, is this a big decision or a little decision, right? A thing like,
Okay.
am I framing it from my perspective or from a global perspective, right? So I don't want to spend a lot of time in this short conversation talking about frameworks, but if you want to upset somebody in a conversation, break their framework, right? If their framework is, I need to show you this thing and I need to finish showing it to you before we have a conversation about it, and I interrupt and say, no, you're showing me the wrong thing, show me something else. I've just broken your framing for the conversation, and it's very disturbing, right? So it's useful to think about frameworks and having the right framework for decision. The next thing, which is really critical, and I'm amazed I don't hear people talk about it a lot, is when you enter into making a decision, the first step is depositionalization. Get off the idea that caused you to realize you have to make a decision, right? Like, I want to go to Hawaii for a vacation.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're going to make a decision about where we're going to vacation. Is this decision, should we go to Hawaii? Or is this decision, where do I go for vacation? And if I start with, I'm going to Hawaii, I've already constrained the analysis too severely. So drop the Hawaii thought. Let's think about where's the perfect vacation, right? So depositionalizing first. Next is, what are my objectives, right? Well, I want to have a great time. I want to stop thinking about work. I want to be warm, not cold, whatever, right? And 2, 3, 4 key objectives are important. Getting 15 kind of messes things up. This is why when I train corporations in aligning strategy to mission and vision, and we start building OKRs, we want 3 or 4 OKRs up on the wall. Those are the key objectives, right?
Yeah.
We don't want 27, right? So get clear on what your objectives are. And the next thing is to get clear on what your constraints are. So I've only got a week. It can't cost more than $10,000. We have to all be able to get there on the same airplane. If we're coming from 4 different locations, we have to arrive within 4 hours of each other. So clarify objectives, clarify constraints. And then a mistake that many people make is that they ask the next question, what data do I have to help me? As opposed to, what data do I need to help me, right? You know, I need the airline schedules, right? I need the flight prices. I need the weather temperatures in all the possible locations, you know, etc.
Yeah.
So then comes ideation, right? Given those objectives, those constraints, what ideas are possible? And that can be very broad and expansive. And it can involve exercises in creativity, etc. But now we know what we're going to hold them against in terms of objectives and constraints, and we're going to refine what data we need. Oh, wait a second, you just introduced the southern tip of Baja. Okay, I need the temperatures for there. I need the flight information from there, right? I want to switch to a very different example in order to, and I'm going to give you two wonderful kind of case study stories.
Yeah.
So the marketing guy comes in and says, I want $6,000 to buy mouse pads as a giveaway at the industry convention. Okay, what are our objectives? What are our constraints? Our objectives are to get our brand in front of a whole bunch of people. Our objectives are to have it be lasting, not just momentary. I want it to stay in front of them. What are the constraints? Well, it can't cost more than 10 grand. I have to be able to carry 500 of them with me on the airplane, whatever. Okay, what data do I need? Well, how
Okay.
likely is it that a mouse pad is going to end up on my prospect's desk? Okay, well, how am I going to get that data? I can't. But what I can do is I can look in my own cabinet and count the number of branded mouse pads that are sitting there, right? There are like 11, okay? So I'm part of a population. I've got a number of 11. That's likely to be a distribution where, the total number or the average number is order of magnitude 11 plus or minus 2 or 3. A given mouse pad is only got a 5 or 8% chance of ending up as the one they choose to use. And in fact, there might be 2/3 of the population where it has virtually zero chance, right? So I can think about it in a
Yep.
stochastic kind of way to
Okay.
assist in this decision. And that's just a little example of how you're applying this. What data do I need? Where can I get that data? How can I do a
Well, I
probabilistic
think
kind
that
of
fits really
analysis of
well
a
into
single point of data? Whatever, right?
exactly. That makes sense from a probabilistic sort of, way. You don't need a deterministic solution as far as whether everybody is going to do it or whether nobody's going to do it, but you're just looking for what part of the population would possibly do it, and then you can justify your spend or your, the activities, that whatever is necessary against the outcome that you're trying to get.
Yeah, and all we've done there is we've applied this methodology that I'm talking about to the analysis of that one question,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I like to use
Okay.
another very, very different example to tell you how extraordinary this practice can be. And it's a real case. So, in a company that Subhash was involved with, the customer success people said, oh, we should send Christmas cards to all our customers. So, okay, wait a second. Let's not start with Christmas cards. What are our objectives here? Thinking of you this time of year, right? Um, well, are you really? Like, if you want to show your customer that you're thinking of them, what would thinking of them really? How would you best communicate that? Is it a Christmas card? And we applied this whole analysis and realized that What this is actually like an annual business review. Like if you're thinking about me, then think about your relationship with me for the last year. Like, how did you do? And he brought into the conversation the Jain sect in India, who are the people who sort of say a breath with every step, say a prayer with every step for the bugs killed with that step because of their devotion to nonviolence. And they have a practice called Kshama. And in Kshama, what you do is you sit down and think about your relationship with a person over the past year, and you identify all the places where you might have caused them any harm. Or you had 8 bug requests, and 3 of them we took more than a week to respond to. And your most important one we took 2 months to fix. And you were the ones who called us and told us that your sign-ons kept getting wiped out, and you had to get help to reset your password. So part of Kshama is identifying the places where you've caused hurt. The next part is apologizing properly. I really do feel bad that we are not good at bug fixing. Like, it's not okay. So here's what I am doing to fix my bug fixing process so that you won't experience that harm in the future. Now, what other harm did I cause you? What other pain did you experience in dealing with me? Tell me so that I can address it and resolve to fix that too. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on that, but I just wanted to show you that should we send a Christmas card led to us introducing Kshama as the way we ran customer success in that organization from then on, and it was phenomenally effective. And that particular business is now $1 billion global business, owned by the SAS Institute. So that was a lot of talk without letting you interrupt me. So ask me the next question or two.
No, I think I was just fascinated with the story because the decision-making process that you're outlining really pulls back to say, like, hey, we have this initial desire. And that initial desire is to reach out to our customers and say, we want to, wish you a happy new year, happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, whatever the holiday may be that's inside of that. But then to pull back and say, like, hey, what are we really trying to accomplish here? And that is, let's actually connect with our customer. This is our year-end review of how we supported them in their initiatives. And then by coming back at it and saying, okay, what we really want to do is we do want to say we're thinking about you. We've thought about how we've interacted with you in the past and how we can serve you better going forward. But even if like it isn't going forward, we know that we want to improve along these lines. And so from another perspective, like I tell this to my employees, I tell this to my partner, I tell this to everybody in my life. I say the best thing that you can do for me is to work on yourself, and the best thing that I can do for you is to work on myself as well. And so in that, we can actually come together and create something better together, because we are coming as whole humans. And that process that you're showing it takes the external and turns it into, hey, here's what we're really trying to address in the process. I'm very curious, though, about the other probabilistic aspects of this. And the reason why I want to drill into that side of the equation is we're now in a world with AI that is becoming more and more prevalent in organizations, and we want to have applications of it in spaces. And AI is not deterministic. It is a probabilistic engine of itself. And I think people need a new paradigm of thought.
In this conversation. It's so extraordinary if you think about the fact that today in commerce, a huge amount of your dealings are with people and people making decisions, which they are doing in deterministic frameworks. And we are building agents to replace them that are by their nature stochastic. So if I tell you the number 72 and say, please remember it, and then I come back to you a month later and say, what was that number? You're going to say 72. But if I tell a stochastic agent 72, it may come back and say 73 or 74 or the next prime number 79. I saw that in a video done
Yeah.
by Sequoia recently. And that's a really fascinating part of this transition as we move into a world where a large number of decisions are being made by tools that are designed to think stochastically.
But are like I work with a number of clients and they come and tell you that they're highly repeatable, their processes are reliable, and then when you look at the numbers, it doesn't show that in their process, right? Like there is 5-10% error that they're kind of dealing with. Are are we lying to ourselves when we say that we're deterministic in the ways that we behave in business, or are we naturally probabilistic and just ignoring our nature?
No, I think we are definitely let me give you a lovely example from business. The business that I was referring to earlier
Okay.
that Subhash built with his mathematics is if you reserve a hotel room anywhere in the world today, the availability of that hotel room to you and the price of it is determined by Subhash Gupta mathematics. That's this $1 billion business that
Okay.
SAS owns. It's called IDEAS, Integrated Decisions and Systems. And what it replaces were humans who were the revenue managers. So if you're the revenue manager of the Hilton Hotel in Chicago and you know that the new Pope Joe is coming, give thanks that an American was just made Pope, you're going to limit room availability and raise prices, right? And your experience about
Yeah.
what kind of price will I be able to bear in the middle of the summer, peak season, but with the addition of a special event of a pope coming. If you tell that human, I can build a system that will never know that the pope's coming, but will make that decision better than you, the human will say it can't be done. You've got to know, right? You've got to call around and check with other hotels and seeing what they're doing. And only then can you set the right price. So what Subhash's math
Cool.
does is it looks at demand. And, you know, 13 weeks before the event, even 4 days before it's announced, the demand starts to change. And because we see an increased demand for the third Thursday in June, we start changing availability and pricing for the third Thursday in June, even though we have no. And oh, by the way, 3 days later, we realize it's not just an increase in demand, it's a special event. So we need to use our special event models and apply that to the demand. And then, you know,
Okay.
we suddenly get an order for a convention the week before where 120 rooms are needed from Monday to Thursday. But we have mathematical models that show that 13% of the convention attendees arrive 2 days earlier and 17% of them stay longer. And when there is a special event like a big football game or something else like that on the following weekend, then the overstay is bigger. And so you have all this data and all this ability to apply probabilistic mathematics and say the available room night is worth $813 now. And so suddenly the room that was normally 290 is suddenly 813. And then
Yeah.
if that room gets taken, the expected revenue from the next room is higher. If that room doesn't get taken, the expected room for that revenue for that room drops a little. And so there's continual adjustment in what the room is worth unrented and what the room is worth rented. And so that's how that all works. And it's all probabilistic mathematics, and it has no idea that the Pope is coming, right? It only knows what's happening in the
But it
demand.
knows the exactly.
So you can now fire the human revenue manager, and your revenue will go up 13%.
We've seen I've seen this in other industries as well, specifically like vending route optimization, where the route planner believed that they knew exactly what machines needed to be serviced when they needed to be serviced, and so they fought the implementation of a system that would be making those decisions for them when that machine, or sorry, the system that we were implementing could look at all 2,500 machines in one service area and pick the 50 that needed to be visited, whereas we could
Exactly.
clearly show that you could drop routes by 20%. You could increase revenue by, I think it was 15 to 30%, depending on the location, and then offer a better product. But every time that we would sit down with some local person, they believed that they had a better system
Yeah.
than working with a machine that could look at the totality of the data and was just looking at the numbers and the usage to see how it was. Absolutely fascinating. How do you
Yeah.
see us
Subash actually built
tying these
the
probabilistic?
Subash actually built all the mathematics for United Van Lines. Like, whose goods do I put on which van? What route do I send a van? I've got an empty van in Sacramento and a load to pick up in San Diego, but I've got 3 trucks coming down from Washington next week. Now, what do I do? All that is
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Subash built all of that
I mean, that's
years ago, 20 years ago.
a fascinating device. Yeah. Um, how do you see us aligning ourselves with a more stochastic and probabilistic approach to decision making? Like, what are some of the gotchas that we have to watch out for leaning into that deterministic pattern?
Well, um, I mean, I often use to just the perfect example is the Monty Hall problem. Do you know what the Monty Hall problem is? Where there are three doors.
You're gonna have to refresh me. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's 3 doors,
yeah.
and he says behind one of these doors is a
Hmm.
million dollars, and behind the other two there's nothing or a pig or something. Which door do you want? And you say, I'll take door number 2.
Exactly.
And he says, okay, well, let's look behind door. Well, before we look behind door number 2, let's look at door number 3. And he opens door number 3, and there's always a pig. And then he says, so do you
Yep.
want to stick to your decision, or do you want to switch to door number 1? And everybody stays with their original decision because they knew in the beginning that the world was uncertain. But once they had chosen door number 2, now that was in their framework, and they tend with amazingly high probability to stick with it, when in fact there's a 2/3 chance of winning by switching and a 1/3 chance of winning by staying. Because in the 2/3 of the cases where it's not behind 2, Monty's going to open the wrong one and the right one's going to be left with the prize. Right? So in 1/3 of cases, you were right with your first choice. In 2/3 of cases, you're going to be right with your second choice. Right? And there's a perfect example
Yes.
where the probabilities are massively different after he's opened one, but you don't tend to rethink. And so when the
And
odds change, decisions change, right?
so basically, it's the sunk cost fallacy wrapped up in a different way from really a business perspective, right? Like every time that you come across, like, am I going to put another $1 million into this project? You need to be making that from a decision as far as where it is and how, like, the probability of you actually either completing the project or making that $1 million back. It doesn't matter if you're 100,000 in or 10 million in. It's what that next million invested
Very,
is going to
very,
be. And
very good
thank you for
example.
explaining the Monty Hall. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
The other,
Richard, I got to
the
say,
other,
like an
I
absolutely.
do want to add one other sort of Kahneman, Scott
Okay.
Klaus, human judgment and reasoning things. It's really important to understand anchoring and how badly anchoring screws up human decision making. I don't know whether you've ever seen the experiment where everybody gets asked the same second question, but 10 different groups are asked different first questions, right? The second question is, what is the
Yeah.
average
Yeah.
daily temperature in San Francisco in July, right? But the first
Okay.
question to one group is the average daily temperature in San Francisco in July more or less than 60 degrees? The second group is it more or less than 70 degrees? The third group is it more or less than 80 degrees? The fourth group is it more or less than 90 degrees? Fifth group, more or less than 100 degrees. Sixth group, more or less than 110 degrees. Seventh group, more or less than 120 degrees.
Okay.
And if you graph the answer to the second question, you get people whose first question anchored them so badly that they're estimating the average daily temperature in San Francisco in July of 115 degrees because their anchoring question was 150, right? Whereas the first group who was asked, is it more or less than 60,
Oh.
end up saying it's 68. So you get these massively different second questions because they were asked
Oh, I totally see that.
an anchoring question that screwed them up. I I actually love
Do you know
the
why? There's another example of this. Bugatti doesn't go to trade shows anymore. So they don't go to car shows anymore. They go to private plane sales and private air shows,
because
because a luxury purchase of a Bugatti looks ridiculously cheap next to a $20 million plane.
yeah, very interesting, really good example.
Very interesting. I love that. I think I have to wrap this up. I like really appreciate the time that we've spent today. But I kind of want to seed the conversation. Have you studied any of Simon Sinek's work?
Yes, yep,
Yeah, specifically, I'm thinking about his work around infinite games. It
yeah.
was one of his latest books, and
I'm not expert or knowledgeable enough to engage in that one.
okay,
I do want to end
all
with
right.
one.
So maybe we'll find another subject.
I do want to end with one last thing.
Yeah.
It's important to understand how bad the human brain is about probabilities. You really have to educate yourself.
Yeah.
The way I do it is with a 10-question test. All 10 questions have a numerical
Okay.
answer, and the objective
Okay.
is to give me not a single answer, but a range that has a 90% probability of including the correct answer. So it's between this and this. So a low estimate and a high estimate. And the 10 questions, this has been done by everyone from fifth graders to Harvard MBA PhDs, right? And the questions are things like, what is the length in miles of the River Nile, right? What is the distance from here to the moon? What was the birth date of Mozart? What the birth year of Mozart? What is the unladen weight of a Boeing 747? What is the number of books in the Old Testament, right? So everybody thinks they maybe have an
Okay.
idea, and now you say, okay, don't give me 0 to infinity. Give me a 90% probability. And if you ask them 10 questions and they give a 90% probability, you should get 9 out of 10 right. And the average person gets 4 or 5 right,
Yep.
right? What was the age at death of Martin Luther King, right? And the reason is that we overestimate our ability to estimate. which is why we need
Tell
external
that to my
fact
to-do list.
and data. And that is true whether we're a fifth grader or whether we're a PhD in computer science. So it's really worth being aware of these human frailties and incorporating that understanding into the way you think about problems.
I think that's it is a really nice thing to end on, is to basically have an understanding of, our own limitations and our own desire to kind of, be better at something than we are, but at the same time having the grace and compassion for ourselves to build systems that actually encompass
Yeah,
that as well.
personal
So
operating systems. Yeah,
exactly, and I'm probably giving myself the advice at the same time. But I gotta say, man, it is always a pleasure, like, being able to chat with you and sharing, like, the wisdom that you have. So thank you once again
that's a
for
fun
taking the time
subject.
today to talk to
Thanks
us.
very much. That was enjoyable.